Don't come back, Evelyn. You made your choice. That was my father's last sentence, cold, final, like a verdict handed down in the dark. Then came the sound of the lock turning, sharp as a crack of thunder. The porch light flickered once and went out, leaving me standing in the falling snow, suitcase in hand, heart in pieces. Early CTA, within first 40 seconds. Have you ever heard a door close behind you, and known it wasn't just made of wood but love? If you have, maybe you'll understand what that night felt like, the kind of silence that presses on your chest and doesn't let go. If you're listening now, tell me where you're watching from, because I think stories like ours find their way to one another. My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 38, an interior designer, or at least I was, before life taught me that rebuilding spaces is easier than rebuilding trust. I came home to Michigan that winter to help my parents save our family diner, the same one that smelled like bacon and coffee every morning when I was little. I fixed the booths, replaced the lights, designed a new logo, Hart's Table, I called it. I thought I was giving them a second chance. But the day we reopened, the sign out front didn't say Hart's Table anymore. It said Dean's Table, a family legacy. Dean, my younger brother, the dreamer, the favorite, stood smiling beside my parents, shaking hands with investors like it had all been his idea. And next to him, laughing in that same golden light, was Mark, my fiancé. The man who once said, "You and I are a team, Evie." That's when it hit me. I wasn't part of their team anymore. I was the blueprint they'd built their future on, and then left out in the snow. I knocked once on that door, just once, hoping Mom would open it, even halfway. She didn't. All I heard was the hum of their heater and my father's laughter, the one that used to fill our kitchen when I was a girl. I stood there, breath fogging the glass, and whispered to no one, "If they can close the door on me, I'll build one of my own, one that never locks." I walked for hours that night, dragging my suitcase through the snow until my fingers burned from the cold. By dawn, the town was waking up. Delivery trucks passing, lights flickering on inside houses that smelled like coffee and comfort. I had neither. The only motel open that early was one with a flickering neon sign that read, "Stay a while." I paid for 2 nights with the last bills in my wallet and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wallpaper peeling above the heater. The air smelled of dust and something sweet, maple syrup maybe, from another life. I thought about calling Mom, just once. But then I remembered her face through the glass, still quiet, choosing silence over me. So instead, I called my voicemail at work, the one that still said, "Hi, this is Evelyn Hart, senior designer." The sound of my own voice broke me. For weeks, I lived between that motel and a diner down the street, the kind where the waitress calls everyone "un." I'd order a cup of coffee and nurse it for an hour, sketching new ideas on napkins, restaurant layouts, furniture designs, anything to make the ache productive. Sometimes the waitress would glance at me and say, "You look like someone who used to own something." I'd just smile. She wasn't wrong. Then one morning, a headline stopped me cold. It was Dean, standing in front of our diner, smiling for the local paper. Dean's Table celebrates grand reopening, a family legacy restored. The photo showed my parents beside him, and right there in the corner, Mark, my Mark, holding a clipboard, wearing a suit. The caption read, "Operations Director, Dean's Table." I felt my stomach twist. That title, Operations Director, was the position I had proposed to investors before I left Chicago. I checked the article twice, hoping it was a mistake. But it wasn't. Every idea I'd ever drawn, every piece of the rebranding, the logo, the color palette, even the slogan, "Where family feels like home," was right there. Only this time it didn't have my name on it. I called Mark's number, my hands shaking so hard the phone almost slipped. He answered after the second ring. "Evie," he said softly, like nothing had happened. I swallowed hard. "How long?" He paused. "Too long." Finally, he sighed. "Dean offered stability. Investors trust him. I couldn't keep waiting for your designs to go somewhere. My voice cracked. You mean my designs that you stole? Don't say it like that, he said, his tone calm, almost patronizing. It's still your vision, just through the right channel. And then, he hung up. That sound, that empty click, hurt worse than the door slamming weeks before. Because when your parents betray you, it wounds the past. But when the person you love betrays you, it destroys the future. That night, I walked outside. The snow finally melted, but the air still cold enough to sting. I looked at my hands, the same hands that had built something beautiful, now shaking and empty. I thought of all the people I'd helped rise, and how they'd used my work to shut me out. In the reflection of the motel window, I saw my own face, tired, pale, but still standing. And for the first time, I didn't look like someone waiting to be let back in. I looked like someone deciding where to go next. I gathered my sketches, my notebooks, my old laptop. I didn't have much, just an idea that maybe if I could build warmth once for others, I could build it again for myself. This time, no one could take it. No brother, no lover, no family name. I looked up at the cracked ceiling, the neon light flickering, "Stay a while," and whispered, "No. I'm done staying. It's time to start building." The next morning, I packed what was left of my life into the trunk of my car, a few sketchbooks, a chipped mug, and the folder of designs I refused to throw away. The road stretched ahead, empty and gray. I didn't have a plan, just a direction, a way. About an hour outside of town, my car started sputtering near an old antique store with a faded sign that read, "Green's Treasures." I pulled over, desperate for a break. Inside, the air smelled like cedar, varnish, and something oddly comforting, like time slowing down. Behind the counter sat a woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind, steady eyes. "You look like someone who's lost more than just her way," she said, her voice soft but certain. I managed a faint smile. "Is it that obvious?" She chuckled. "Honey, I've been there. We all have." Her name was Margaret Green, but she told me to call her Mrs. Green. She'd run the shop for 30 years, restoring broken furniture and selling pieces that still had a bit of soul left. When I told her I used to design interiors, she raised an eyebrow and said, "Well, then you're in luck. I could use a pair of hands that understand wood and patience." That's how it began. My first day, I cleaned dust from old cabinets, polished table legs, and listened to Mrs. Green hum old jazz tunes from a cracked radio. In the evenings, she'd tell stories about her late husband, about rebuilding after losing their house in the 80s. "Wood remembers?" she'd say, running her hand along a scarred oak table. "It bends, it breaks, but if you treat it right, it learns how to hold again." Maybe she wasn't just talking about furniture. Weeks turned into months. My hands toughened, my back ached, but my heart, the one that had felt frozen outside that diner, began to thaw. I started designing again, sketching small pieces between customers. A coffee table made from barnwood, a lamp base carved like two hands holding each other. Mrs. Green saw my drawings one afternoon and smiled. "You've got something special there, Evelyn. You should sign your name on it." I laughed softly. "That name doesn't mean much anymore." "Then make it mean something again." That night, under the dim shop light, I carved my initials, E.H., beneath the first table I finished. It felt like breathing again. Word spread quietly. People came in asking, "Are you the one who made that table at the church sale?" And just like that, I began selling small custom pieces. Furniture with stories, not just shapes. Mrs. Green refused to take a percentage. "Consider it rent for all the tears you've swept off my floor," she said with a wink. For a while, life felt peaceful, simple, real, honest. Until one evening, I turned on the local news and saw a segment that made my heart stop. Dean again. Standing in front of a new restaurant, Dean's Table grand opening, sponsored by Larson Group. the same investor who once told me no. Behind Dean, smiling beside the mayor, was Mark. The reporter's voice echoed, "The brothers' success continues to inspire entrepreneurs across the state. Their design concept, titled Warm Modern Americana, has drawn national attention." Warm Modern Americana. Those were my words, the phrase I'd written in my original proposal. I sat there frozen, gripping the remote, the static humming louder than my pulse. They hadn't just taken my designs. They were now expanding them, opening a chain built on the foundation I'd once dreamed of. Mrs. Green came into the room quietly, saw my face, and didn't need to ask. She placed a hand on my shoulder. "Let them build, Evelyn. Just make sure yours stands taller." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the workbench, running my fingers over a half-sanded table. Every scar on that wood looked like something I'd survived, a reminder that beauty can be rebuilt from damage. When dawn finally came, the shop was filled with golden light. I brewed coffee, poured 2 cups, and told Mrs. Green, "I'm starting something new." She raised an eyebrow. "A business?" I nodded. "A home, for everything people throw away." She smiled, slow and proud. "Then call it what it is." And that's how Hearth and Grace was born, a name that meant warmth and mercy, a place where broken things, tables, chairs, people, could find their shape again. We cleared the back room of the store, painted it white, and hung a small wooden sign above the door. It wasn't much, just letters carved by my own hands, but when I stepped back to look at it, I felt something inside me settle. For the first time in years, I wasn't rebuilding someone else's dream. I was building mine, and somewhere deep down, I knew the same family that once shut me out would one day have to walk through my door to see what I'd built. A year passed, and Hearth and Grace had quietly become something people talked about. Not loudly, but the kind of word of mouth that spreads in Sunday church gatherings and family kitchens. "Did you hear about that woman in Flint?" they'd say. "She makes furniture that feels alive again." The shop's windows glowed warm at night, filled with the scent of oak oil and coffee. Every piece we sold had a tag that read, "Made from what was once broken." Sometimes customers cried when they picked up their orders. They'd tell me stories of husbands lost, of empty houses, of trying to make a home again. I listened because I knew exactly what that sounded like. Mrs. Green used to tease me, "You're not just making tables, dear, you're building therapy." And maybe she was right. I wasn't building furniture, I was rebuilding faith, one plank at a time. One afternoon, a reporter from the Michigan Daily Chronicle stopped by. She said she'd heard about us from a customer whose dining table had been featured at a local wedding. When the article came out, the headline read, "Abandoned daughter turns heartbreak into $5 million handmade empire." The phones wouldn't stop ringing. Orders came from Chicago, Milwaukee, even Atlanta. Mrs. Green stood behind the counter, beaming. "You did it, Evelyn." "You made your own name mean something again," I smiled, but inside, a small part of me stayed cautious. Success, I'd learned, was just another kind of noise that drew ghosts back. And sure enough, one morning, the past walked through my door. The bell above the shop rang, and there he was, Dean. He looked different, heavier, older, wearing a watch too expensive for a man who used to borrow money from me. "Evie," he said, his voice smooth, practiced. "It's been a while." I set down my brush. "Not long enough." He gave a sheepish smile. "You've built quite a place here." "Impressive." His eyes wandered around the store, scanning every polished surface like a thief deciding what to take next. Then he said what I'd already expected. "Mark and I are expanding Dean's Table into lifestyle branding. Furniture, home decor, the works. We thought maybe Hearth and Grace could come under our umbrella. We could go national." I stared at him. It wasn't even the greed in his tone that hurt. It was the arrogance of assuming I'd still want to belong. "I built this," I said quietly. "Every table, every order. You don't get to put your name on this one." Dean laughed just a little. Come on, Evie. You're good with the heart stuff, but we have the capital. Let us handle the business side. I shook my head. No. The last time I trusted family with business, I lost both. For a moment, his jaw tightened. The mask slipped. He leaned in, his voice low. You think you're better than us now? That you're some saint for building junk from old wood? Before I could answer, the door opened again, and Mark walked in. He still had that same polished smile, the one that once made me forget my better judgment. Evie, he said softly, as if saying my name might melt the years away. I stayed silent. Dean gestured toward him. He's the one who convinced me to come. He thinks this could be a family thing again. Mark stepped closer. Evelyn, I know how it ended. I made mistakes. But look at you. You've turned tragedy into art. That's something people will pay for. Let's merge. Hearth and Grace by Dean's table. We can both win. The air in the shop thickened. Behind me, the morning light reflected off a newly varnished dining table. In its surface, I saw the reflection of the two men who had once defined my life, and the woman I had become standing between them. I took a slow breath. This table, I said, running my hand over the smooth wood, was made from a tree struck by lightning. Everyone said it was ruined, too split to fix. But I learned something. Sometimes when wood breaks from fire, it becomes harder, more beautiful, stronger than before I looked at both of them. That's what I became, Dean scoffed. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but at least it'll be my regret. He turned sharply toward the door. Mark hesitated, eyes softening as if searching for a piece of the woman who used to love him. You could have had everything, he whispered. I do, I replied. I just stopped measuring it in your approval. When the door closed behind them, the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was clean. Mrs. Green came out from the back room, drying her hands on a towel. Old ghosts, huh? I nodded. She smiled. Good. That means the living part's done. Now comes the thriving. I laughed for the first time that day. And as I turned the open sign back around on the door, sunlight flooded the shop floor, landing on the carving beneath my newest piece. Hearth and Grace, built by hands that refused to beg. I stood there for a long moment, watching the light catch the grain of the wood. It was warm, alive, like something that had survived the fire and learned how to shine because of it. 6 months after that confrontation, Hearth and Grace had expanded into 3 locations, each one built with the same promise carved beneath every piece, made from what was once broken. Magazines started calling it the soul of the Midwest. People said our furniture didn't just fill homes, it healed them. I never chased fame, but it found me anyway. And sometimes, in the quiet after closing, I would catch myself wondering if Dad or Mom had seen one of those articles, if they recognized the name they once told me to let go of. One gray morning in early spring, as I unlocked the shop, I saw a familiar car parked by the curb, an old blue sedan I hadn't seen in years. The window rolled down, and there they were, my parents. Mom looked smaller, her hair almost white now. Dad's face was drawn, like life had sanded him down too. They stepped out slowly, standing by the sidewalk, unsure if they were welcome. Evie? Mom said softly, the nickname falling from her lips like a memory she wasn't sure she had the right to use. I stood still, the key frozen in the lock. Dad cleared his throat. Dean's table. It's gone. I didn't ask how. I already knew. Greed never built anything meant to last. He continued. The investors pulled out. We lost the house. Dean's gone back to Chicago. He hesitated. We were wondering if maybe we could talk. Just talk. For a moment, I felt the old ache rise in my chest, the same one from that snowy night years ago. But it didn't hurt the same way anymore. It was quieter now, heavier but softer, like something that had learned its place. I unlocked the door and gestured inside. "Come in." The air in the shop was warm, carrying the faint scent of lemon oil and fresh-cut pine. They looked around, eyes wide, as if walking through a dream that somehow belonged to me. Mom ran her hand along a mahogany table. "It's beautiful," she whispered. I nodded. "It's honest." We sat for a while without speaking. Then Dad said, his voice cracking, "You really did it, Evie. You built something out of nothing." I looked at him, the man who once locked me out, now struggling to find his words. "I didn't build it out of nothing, Dad," I said quietly. "I built it out of pain. And that's never nothing." He nodded, eyes glistening. "We were wrong." Mom reached across the table, her hand trembling. "We just didn't know how to love you without needing to control you." For a long time, I said nothing. Then I stood up, walked to the counter, and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a handcrafted keychain carved from walnut, smooth and simple. I handed it to Dad. On it were 3 words: "The door is open." He stared at it, blinking hard. "What's this?" I smiled softly. "It's not forgiveness. It's an invitation, the kind that doesn't require apologies, just effort." Mom began to cry quietly, shoulders shaking, and for the first time in years, I didn't look away. I let her. Because some tears deserve space to fall. When they left, I watched from the doorway. The car pulled away slowly, the same way it had the night they drove home after shutting me out. Only this time I didn't feel small. I felt grounded, still, free. Mrs. Green came in a few minutes later, carrying a bundle of fabric. She glanced toward the window. "Old ghosts again?" I smiled faintly. Maybe not ghosts anymore. "Just people learning to knock." She nodded, setting the fabric down. "You know, Evie, doors are funny things. You can close them out of fear or open them out of love. Either way, they tell you who you are." I looked at the sign above the shop, Hearth and Grace, and said quietly, "I think I finally know." As the sun dipped lower, light poured through the front glass, catching the wooden grain of the floor. It reminded me of the first night I ever walked into Mrs. Green's shop, lost, frozen, afraid. Only now, I realized, that night wasn't an ending. It was the knock that led me here. Sometimes I come to the shop early before the sun rises. There's a quiet moment, just me, the faint scent of wood dust, and the soft creak of the old floor beneath my feet. In that silence, I can almost hear every version of myself that's lived inside these walls. The scared girl with a suitcase, the woman who refused to quit, the builder who finally learned what home really means. I used to think home was a place. Now I know. It's a piece you carve with your own hands. People still ask me why I named it Hearth and Grace, and I always tell them because hearth is warmth, and grace is what it takes to survive without bitterness. Those 2 things built me, the fire that kept me going, and the mercy that kept me human. Dean never reached out again, but I heard he's working for another restaurant group in Chicago. Mark sent some stories don't need revisiting, they just need closure. As for my parents, they come by sometimes. They never stay long, never talk about the past. But Dad still carries that wooden keychain on his car keys. Mom brings muffins she bakes herself. And each time she leaves one by the counter, always with a note that says, "For when the day feels heavy." I think that's her way of knocking. The funny thing about forgiveness is, it doesn't always look like a hug. Sometimes it's just letting go of the weight that keeps your hands too full to build something new. Last winter, we held a community workshop at the shop. Families came in to make wooden ornaments together. One little girl asked me, "Miss Evelyn, why are there lines in the wood if it's new?" I smiled and told her, "Because even strong things remember where they've been." She nodded and said, "Like people?" "Yes," I whispered, "exactly like people." That night, after everyone left, I stayed behind to lock up. Outside, snow had begun to fall again. Soft, slow, familiar. I turned off the lights, except one, the lamp near the window. Through the glass, its glow spilled onto the street, warm and steady, like a promise. And standing there, I realized something simple. The door my parents once closed on me didn't end my story. It opened every other one that followed. If you've ever been left out in the cold, don't stop knocking. One day you'll build the home you were meant to find. If this story touched you, take a moment to subscribe and share it with someone who needs a little light tonight. Sometimes that's how a story finds its next home.